Great show for you today. Some recruiting conversation. We've got a special guest coming on too here at about 9:25. Coach Leon Douglas from North Kansas City High School. His star pupil went public to Alabama yesterday. And, of course, if you've been listening to the show, you know who we're talking about. We're talking about Edric Hill. Edric Hill, of course, one of the best players in the country, a defensive lineman. It's a consensus four-star kid, no doubt about that. And he's someone that had been heavily considering the University of Alabama for a while since he camped at Alabama and did so well. Really much like I will say a Kobe Prentice earned his offer. And with the University of Alabama, I think they liked him going into the summer quite a bit. But again, it wasn't a slam dunk that he would be a take in the class until he looked so good at the camp. And I think Nick Saban still values so much of that and so much of the camp, experience and performing well. And I think he performed to the point where he ended all doubt, no doubt about it. And I think he was able to do a heck of a job and earn that offer. And I think it was a big time get for Alabama. And so I think no question about it that he's a big piece of the puzzle. The defensive line is one of the key areas we've talked about with this 2023 class, and that is they have to add pieces to that D line, no question about it. And they got a few weeks ago Hunter Osborne from Hewitt-Trussville High School, no question about that. And they were able to add him to the defensive line group. He was the first piece, and Edric Hill is the second. Edric Hill is a good football player. I don't think he's Peter Woods. I don't think he's that good. But certainly, I think he's a different kind of player than Kelby Collins. But I think he's a guy that's disruptive, and he's a true inside defensive lineman, which I think those are hard to find. I mean, there's no question about it. If you're looking for guys that are disruptive, and then I would say the comparison to Fedarian Mathis is a good one. I think he's someone that came out of Slidell, Louisiana, was a four-star kid, wasn't as highly rated as some guys that Alabama either signed or missed on. But he became better players than a lot of those guys. He was developed well. And, I've been critical of Freddie Roach, but Freddie Roach helped develop him in college. There's no doubt about that. Fedarian became a second-round pick of the Washington Commanders and became a really good football player. And I think this kid has a chance to be a really good player too. He comes in with the right mindset. He wants to work. He wants to be developed. And I think with Edric Hill, he's a guy, I don't think you'll see him contribute a lot as a freshman. Now, I may be wrong about that. Kobe Prentice, no one thought that he would at the wide receiver spot, but he ended up becoming, and he will contribute quite a bit as a freshman. Of course, injuries have opened a door for him, but he knocked the door down. And who knows, maybe Edric Hill will as well. But I definitely think he was worth a take for Alabama. And again, when you're trying to sign 5 or 6 quality defensive linemen and they're not easy to find, I think there's a good take, no question, for the University of Alabama. And so we'll talk to Coach Leon Douglas. And before you ask, no, it's not that Leon Douglas, not the Leon Douglas from Leeton, Alabama, and the great basketball player for the Crimson Tide, but this is Coach Leon Douglas, who has for many years run this North Kansas City high school program, and we look forward to catching up with him and getting his thoughts on his star pupil, Edric Hill, and how this process started and how he's developed in his program and ended up at the University of Alabama. So we look forward to adding him to the conversation. And we will definitely, we can add you, 256-576-4977, if you want to join the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared on Blitz Sports Radio. We really look forward each and every day to talking recruiting because it's such a popular topic for all of our listeners in our area. They love the recruiting process. and they love to follow it each and every day. Alabama now with 21 commitments, and they have the runaway #1 class in the country in every poll. Now, and that's pretty significant because they've missed on a couple of high-quality, defensive linemen like a Peter Woods and like a Kelby Collins. But I'll say this. I think Kelby Collins is a really good player, but I think Peter Woods is the bigger story. And I think if you're Alabama, you're trying to flip Peter Woods still to this right now. I think, of course, they'll still try to flip Kelby, but I think Peter Woods, is the guy, that really is the disruptive inside player, like a, like a Peter Woods and like a Fedarian Mathis before him that was on the field at Alabama last year that had 9 sacks, that really was one of the best interior defensive linemen in the country and was a captain for Alabama for 2 years and helped them reach the national championship game. I don't think there's any question that when you look at it, that interior defensive linemen are the hardest to find. I think Kelby Collins is more of an edge guy, more of a defensive end in a 3-4 or a 4-3. But I think Peter Woods can rush the passer on the interior like a Quinnen Williams. Remember how good he was in 2018 for Alabama. I think the same thing can be said even for Edric Hill, who committed yesterday. I mean, if you watch Edric Hill's film, it's very impressive. He has a really nice get off. He does a great job playing with his hands. Very strong young man. And again, he had the offer list. I mean, his offer list was absolutely outstanding and legit because Edric Hill was a heavily recruited guy who could have gone, anywhere across the country in the United States. Certainly, he was wanted by Missouri, the home state school, but it wasn't just that. I mean, he had an offer list that was, when you look at it, it's a who's who from around the nation as far as recruiting goes. When he got it down to his final 6 schools, you had Alabama and LSU and Missouri from the SEC, and then you had Southern California, Oregon, and Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is significant because I think Brent Venables is one of the best defensive minds in all of college football. He certainly liked what he saw out of Edric Hill. Certainly, I'm not a huge Lincoln Riley guy. I think his teams are soft, but certainly USC liked him enough to offer, so you got to understand that. And Missouri is trying to keep their best players in state. They kept Luther Burden in state last year and have had back-to-back top 20 classes under Elijah Drinkwitz. Now they need to see more results on the field now heading into year 3 for Coach Drinkwitz. But again, they've recruited well. LSU, they've got one of the top front fours, I think, in all of college football going into the year. I know they didn't have good seasons the last 2 years, but Mason Smith's a former 5-star. I think Jaquelin Roy was a 5-star talent, though I think some had him as a 4-star. He's an outstanding player. That's your 2 defensive tackles. Ali Gay has had a really good career at LSU at one of those D ends, and then B.J. Ojolari, of course, his brother played at Georgia, but B.J. is an outstanding pass rusher. They've got an outstanding front 4, and they thought enough of Edric Hill to pursue him heavily. So, I have been critical of Freddie Roach. There's no doubt about that. But Freddie got the job done in this situation, and Edric Hill had some very good things to say about Freddie Roach in the recruiting process. So, there you go. Freddie getting the job done with this prospect. But, again, did not get it done with Peter Woods, did not get it done with Kelby Collins, but neither one of those guys has signed their scholarship papers yet. Kelby committed to Florida, and then Peter Woods committed to Clemson. We'll see if that changes, and we'll see where this defensive line class goes next. I don't know that they're going to add another piece this month. You're going to be focused on, I believe, September the 19th, I believe is the date for Jordan Renaud from Tyler Legacy. I believe that's the date that he selected to commit, and we'll see what happens on that day. If that day holds or if he pushes his commitment date back. He certainly is considering Alabama heavily. Many people in the industry that follow recruiting, like a Joseph Hastings who's been on this show, Jimmy Stein, a lot of those guys, their colleague Andrew Bone, they believe that Alabama still leads for Renaud. But again, he's supposed to visit Oklahoma again before making this decision public. And he's still slated to visit Alabama on October the 8th for the Dirt Neck Bowl when Texas A&M comes to get their beat down from the University of Alabama. Now, Jordan Renaud has already officially visited Alabama. He did so in June before the dead period. And so we'll see, if he makes this return trip to Tuscaloosa. If he does, he might do it as an Alabama commitment. I still think if you get a Jordan Renaud, who is another one in the camp settings and that at Alabama really impressed and really impressed nationally with some performances at some camps and combines. He's Jamarian Miller's, the Alabama running back, his former teammate at Tyler Legacy as well. I still think if you get this kid, Jordan Renaud, that I would stop pursuing Kelby Collins. I would throw more of my efforts into flipping Peter Woods and then trying to get James Smith and Quay Russaw in the fold from Carver Montgomery. Quay, of course, is more of an outside linebacker edge player, but James Smith is a very disruptive interior defensive lineman. If you can have guys in your D-line class like Hunter Osborne, Edric Hill, James Smith, and Peter Woods, that first of all you dominate your state. So the loss of Kelby Collins with Renaud in the class does not sting nearly as much, and you have really, when you think about that, in Hunter Osborne, Peter Woods, and James Smith, three disruptive, young interior defensive linemen that can be developed and give you maybe within a couple of years one of the best defensive line groups in college football, should they be developed properly, by the Alabama coaching staff. And why wouldn't they be, considering that Alabama's coaching staff is probably the best in the country when it comes to development. And that's why Edric Hill chose to go to Tuscaloosa. So Edric Hill is going to be the focus today. And again, in just a few minutes, we're going to welcome Coach Leon Douglas into the conversation, and we surely appreciate his time from North Kansas City High School. He's been there quite a few years and built a great program there in the state of Missouri. I'd like to delve into his program because, again, we're not as familiar with how high school football works in that state as we are here in our own great state of Alabama. So it's always interesting to hear different perspectives from other head coaches in different areas and see, how, from looking at the school itself, I think it's 1,600 plus students, which is more along the lines of a larger school here, like 7A James Clemens, 7A Bob Jones. It would be considered a 7A type high school in the state of Alabama. So it's a large school classification. So certainly Edric Hill has played against large schools and high-level competitions. So and he's been developed by Coach Leon Douglas, who is, I know, very excited for the young man to get a chance to go play, at the highest level in college football. And Edric said that. He said, I want to practice against the best, play against the best. He has, he's become fast friends with Miles McVeigh, who is from a bordering state, from East St. Louis, Illinois, but they both have now committed to Alabama. McVeigh is a guy that, as we've already talked about, is a massive right tackle prospect. I believe he's going to be a right tackle. He's anywhere from 6'5" to 6'6", 370 pounds, so he's going to need to reshape his body, but if he does, he has really nice feet and athleticism and has a ton of upside, like a Jaheim Otis, as we talked about from the defensive class last year, who's already lost 70-plus pounds and already being developed in what could be a guy that impacts, I think, going into the season. And you know how I hate rankings, but preseason rankings, because they don't mean anything. But this Alabama defense has a chance. And, they have to earn it, but they've got a chance to be the best in college football this year. And if a guy like Jaheim Otis is talented enough, with all the veterans they have returning, especially along the defensive line, when you got Justin Aboigbe, who's really a 4-year starter. You've got Byron Young, who's been a stalwart for 4 years, going into his fourth season. You have a DJ Dale, who started since his freshman year, and a Tim Smith, who's seen extensive action as well as a rotational player, and yet you can force your way into the lineup. It shows how talented you are. Now, Edric Hill, could he do the same thing next year? Because this D-line group will be much different, because a lot of these guys are going to go on to the NFL. So there'll be an opportunity for a lot of good young defensive linemen to earn playing time right away in their careers. And so we'll find out, first of all, is Edric going to enroll early? I want it, you want to hear it from his head coach and see, what his mindset is. And then, does he potentially, can he make enough progress as a senior in high school and then physically, once he gets to Alabama, to be a force early? Certainly, we've seen Jaheim Otis do that. But sometimes it takes a year or two for a young man to develop. It did with Fedarian Mathis, but certainly his last 2 years he was a dominant force. And as we've said, we've seen a lot of the same out of Edric Hill with his film, and you watch his skill set, his length, his ability to get off blocks, his ability to both rush the passer from the interior, but also play the run. He seems to be a well-rounded defensive lineman. Again, he's not 6'5". I think he's closer to 6'3", 290 pounds, but he's a very, very good football player. To me, it looks like when you watch him fundamentally, he's been very well coached, and so that's a credit to Coach Leon Douglas and his coaching staff at North Kansas City High School. And so we're looking forward to picking Coach's brain and kind of figuring out what kind of player Edric Hill is. Certainly, I know he was very excited to commit to Alabama. I think he'd been privately committed for several weeks. When you read his interviews and what he was revealed to the media yesterday, but I think he wanted his spot too, because Alabama is this is 21 kids they've got committed. So, and I don't anticipate them losing anymore. They certainly lost. Elliott Washington earlier in the season. He flipped to Penn State, but I don't think that's a huge loss for Alabama. Certainly, I think their secondary group, when you look at the Caleb Downses of the world and all these guys they have committed, they still would like to add Cormani McClain and maybe another corner or two, but they certainly have added some really nice pieces in their secondary class. And so, led by Caleb Downs, who may be the best player in the United States. And so I think they've done a really nice job with that secondary. And so I think when there's always a chance you could lose a guy, and they did lose him early, Washington, from the state of Florida. But I think, they were already, anticipating that, and that's why they just continue to move forward, continue to build their recruiting class. And it's also why they continue to work guys out, because they knew they needed to sign several safeties, because as we know, this Alabama football team is a veteran defense. It's a defense where there's going to be a lot of guys moving on to the National Football League after this season. And so when you have to add some pieces, you certainly, the recruiting process for Nick Saban is always one that he does a nice job of covering every base, so to speak, and he does a great job of evaluating. They already had gotten commitments early from Jaleel Hurley. Jaleel was actually the first commitment in the class from Florence High School. He has the length and the ability, to play corner, but he could end up being a safety. They got Tony Mitchell committed from Thompson High School, a young man who actually grew up here in Harvest before his family moved him out there to be a part of Mark Freeman's program. So you have a Jaleel Hurley, a Caleb Downs, a Tony Mitchell already in this class. And then you have one of the, the most intriguing prospects as far as safety prospects in athletes in the class, in Brayson Hubbard from Pascagoula, Mississippi, Ocean Springs High School. He's someone that he was really a 6A All-State quarterback at Ocean Springs a year ago and was an All-State player, Mr. Football guy, but he's projects as a DB and worked out at DB at Alabama at the camp and really impressed Nick Saban. He committed early. He had been a Scott Berry, Southern Mississippi baseball commit for 2 years, but wanted to play college football, and really until Alabama and Mississippi State offered him in this summer, before his senior season, his future was thought to be baseball. But now Brayson Hubbard will be going to Alabama, and outstanding athlete. If you watch him on film, can run, can throw. There's not a lot of DB film of him, but he's somebody I think with a big upside. And speaking of upside, certainly we believe that Edric Hill has a big one, and we're going to go on a break. When we come back, Leon Douglas, head coach at North Kansas City High School, set to join us and talk some Edric Hill here on the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared on the Blitz Sports Radio.
Are you tired of chasing a roofing contractor to show up on time or even show up at all? I'm Sam Fleming with Fleming Roofing and Restoration. Our motto at Fleming Roofing is we show up. Our goal at Fleming Roofing is to provide the reliable customer service that you deserve, and we have the resources to meet all of your roofing needs: residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. We are manufacturer certified for roof coatings, single-ply membranes, and asphalt shingles. Whenever you need a roofing professional you can count on, call Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We are committed to finding the solution that meets your needs. We don't have quotas or heavy-handed sales tactics. Fleming Roofing, we have expert experience. We show up. Free estimates, residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. Check us out at FlemingHSV.com. FlemingHSV.com. When you need a quick response, it's Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We show up.
Here's Bobby White from Woody Anderson Ford on their service department.
President's Award winner 2 years in a row. That's only given to the top 10% of Ford dealers in customer satisfaction. So we're very proud of the service department. And our body shop. If you happen to get into an accident, which not a lot of people just want to go down and see a body shop, but if you get into an accident, award-winning body shop. We have state-of-the-art paint booths back there. They're waterborne paints that we use, friendly for the environment. We've got our production system, the way things are in and out. We have the fastest cycle rate in town of getting your vehicle in, getting your vehicle out, and assured that it's fixed right. We take pictures before it's wrecked, and not only after, but we take it as we're putting the parts on. All done to above industry standards. So I'm proud of our body shop too. Don't forget our parts department. So if you happen to need parts, performance parts, or just parts if you're a weekend mechanic.
Woody Anderson Ford, located at the corner of Jordan and Sparkman, as well as Hughes Road and Madison. You can also check out the great deals at WoodyAndersonFord.com.
Tom Abraham here from my friend Brian Hamaker and his team at North Alabama Mortgage. Look, buying a home is the biggest purchase you will make in your life, and it can be a bit intimidating, so you want people that can help walk you through the mortgage process and get you the best deal possible. That's what North Alabama Mortgage does, and they do it in Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida, from first-time purchases to refis, conventional, VA, FHA, and USDA loans. They have the solution at North Alabama Mortgage. Visit NorthAlabamaMortgage.com to learn more. That's NorthAlabamaMortgage.com. What's better than Valley Equipment Rental? 2 Valley Equipment Rentals, and that's just what we have now. The original on the South Memorial Parkway between Drake and Airport Road, and their second location on North Memorial Parkway just north of Winchester Road. Valley Equipment is locally owned and has more skid steers, excavators, and lifts than anyone in the area, plus all the small tools that you need to get the job done like a pro. And if you are a pro, you need to check out the new North location now, because Valley Equipment has what you need. Learn more at valleyequipmentrents.com.
This is Wes Neighbors talking to Chris Haygood of Bob Wallace Appliance. Chris, what sets you apart from other appliance dealerships?
Wes, these appliances are going into the most used room in your house, your kitchen. The way we have these appliances displayed, it's easy for you to visualize how they'll look in your home. Wes, what sets us apart is the people. They're well trained. In fact, they live and breathe these appliances. And if you need service, you'll really appreciate our parts department.
Contact Bob Wallace Appliance at 256-533-2121.
Great food and the best live entertainment is what it's all about at the Furniture Factory Bar and Grill. Head to downtown Huntsville every Tuesday for karaoke on the only outdoor karaoke stage in North Alabama. Thursday night is the Valley's longest running and biggest bike night. Food and drink specials, giveaways, and live music on the patio. And the Furniture Factory menu is fully loaded with options, from steaks to salads, plus a whole lot more. Featuring a weekday happy hour that starts at 3, 619 Meridian Street, downtown Huntsville, and online at FurnitureFactoryBarGrill.com.
Do you have discomfort in your legs? Varicose veins can affect not only how your legs look, but how they feel. Symptoms of varicose veins include pain, swelling, aching, heaviness, and fatigue. Dr. Tracy Lowry of Best Vein Care of Huntsville can diagnose and treat your varicose veins with the latest minimally invasive techniques. Diagnosis and treatment is covered by most insurances. Call 256-715-7151 to schedule your free screening. Go to bestveincarehuntsville.com.
Welcome back to the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio with D Squared, Drew DeArmond. Really enjoy talking recruiting. We've been talking Edric Hill today, North Kansas City High School, an elite football player, really one of the top 2 prospects in the state of Missouri, the best defensive line prospect. He commits to the University of Alabama, and we talked about it. I mean, he had a long list of suitors: LSU, the in-state Missouri Tigers, Oregon, Oklahoma. I mean, this is a young man, USC. He had a lot of schools that were coming after him. He decides to pull the trigger for the University of Alabama. We're very excited to see him come to our state and play college football. But part of the show is also being able to give a platform to high school coaches, not just in Alabama, but throughout the Southeast and even the United States. And we're honored to be joined by our next guest. And again, as we said, he's done an outstanding job at North Kansas City High School. He is not the Leon Douglas that was an All-American at Alabama basketball-wise from Leeton, Alabama, but he's made his own name as a football coach at North Kansas City and then built a great program there in Missouri, and he's been good enough to join us this morning on the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline. Coach Douglas, you're with Drew DeArmond here on the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio. Thank you for taking the time to join us for a few minutes. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for taking the time, sir. We know it's a busy one. I guess, first of all, for our listeners who are tuning in today and listening to this, to familiarize us with Missouri and high school football in the state, have you guys gotten underway, or when do you guys start your season? What's the calendar like in Missouri to get cranked up for high school football?
Well, we just finished up our jamborees last week, and so this week is actually week 1. And so we usually finish up around that first week in December.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And I was also, before you came on with us, I'd kind of researched North Kansas City, and I was looking at the size of the school. As far as classifications go, it looks to me like it would be a large classification in Alabama if you compared it like a 7A school. Alabama has 7 classifications. How does it work in Missouri as far as classifications, and how large a school in this state is North Kansas City High School?
We are Class 5. We're about anywhere from 16 to 1,700 students typically. North Kansas City High School historically is one of the most diverse high schools in the state of Missouri.
Wow. And so you said they're Class 5. Is that the largest class in Missouri, or is there larger classes?
No, we have a larger class. We have Class 6. They're typically anywhere from about 18 to 2,300.
Wow. Okay. So we're just kind of familiarizing ourselves. So they would be more of a North Kansas City, if you compare it to Alabama, then it would be more like a 6A school in Alabama, even though enrollment-wise here in our state, I think North Kansas City would be a 7A school. But, okay, it would be like almost like a 6A school in the state of Alabama. So still a large school, high-level competition. And now you guys, your pupil, Edric Hill, decides to commit to Alabama. As far as Edric goes, I know you've been able to see him develop. I was reading some things yesterday about how you basically knew about this young man when he was in 8th grade. You had another big-time defensive lineman in your program at the time that's now on the Power 5 level. But I know this young guy kind of caught your eye when he was in middle school.
Yes, sir. You know, he was a young man that had great athleticism and size, as a 7th and 8th grader. And I had a guy on my staff that worked at his middle school, and he compared him to a guy that we already had in our program named D. Tommy Wide Bard. And I believed it at first, and then once I laid eyes on him, he looked like him right now.
Right.
And over the years, Edric has, grown into, 6'3", 290, 295 pounds. But the kid's an athlete. You know what I mean? He's light on his feet, very quick. He's played basketball for a number of years in high school as well as middle school.
Now, is he still playing basketball at your school's coach, or is he or did he decide to concentrate on football and go to one sport to prepare himself for the next step collegiately?
He is not. That's one of the things we talked about, finishing up his sophomore year, that, to really make that next step and really, put yourself on the market for some of those football powers. You got to commit and change your body in the weight room, get on the camp circuit and go compete, and showcase yourself a little bit more. And so he did those things, and, I'm very proud to say that, the work that he's put in is paying off, or paid off.
Well, I can tell you, just watching his film yesterday, Coach, after he went public with his commitment, it looks like you and your staff did a great job. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, I was looking at the student directory. You're also the defensive coordinator for North Kansas City in addition to being the head coach?
Yes, sir. I call our defense half for a number of years. So it's not too hard to call defense when you got guys like Edric on your team.
No question. And I was just watching his film, though, and it looks to me like fundamentally you guys have done a great job of coaching him. He used his hands well. He was a guy that not just was a one-dimensional type guy just trying to get up the field. He played the run very well. Also was very quick at first step-wise. Did a nice job pressuring the quarterback. But talk about developing him as a player, because just because you've been blessed with physicality and size doesn't mean you're going to be a good football player. You have to be a coachable young man. But talk about you and your staff being able to develop Edric into the prospect that he is now.
Edric's been a young man that he's taken coaching very well. And so when you can go provide him instruction and insight, he can apply it. He's a guy that, again, we've challenged on the field and in the weight room to, take it to another level, and he has done that. I remember, when Alabama offered, and he was excited, and one of the things I kind of explained to him was like, you may have to go to camp still, to solidify that opportunity. And, that was something that did not, change his mind, did not change his attitude whatsoever. He actually perked up and was kind of excited about it. So that's one of the things that makes it easier to really, coach someone like that, is that they welcome challenges, they welcome the development, instruction is desired. He's a young man who wants to be coached, and I'm definitely going to miss him here shortly.
No question about that, and that's significant too, because Alabama does like to do that with a lot of prospects. Now, there are a select few that don't have to work out and that they offer and then they would take commitments from, but many of them, I would say, 60% or more have to work out for the coaching staff at camp. Nick Saban values that, and I think that's probably something that I caught Nick Saban's eye, I would think, when he went to camp and worked, under Freddie Roach, and of course under the eye of Coach Saban, that Edric wasn't afraid to go compete and earn his offer. In other words, if I have to show these guys I'm one of the best players in the country, I don't mind doing that, and I'll earn my offer. That's a great mindset to have, Coach.
And you talk about, in the landscape where, this recruiting thing now is so, he doesn't have to do that. Could go to another pretty good school, that's comparable. And so I think, him having that mindset, gives him an opportunity to be very successful at that level, because he's ready to compete at a high level day in and day out.
No, I don't think there's any question about that. And Coach, I know you've talked about developing him from the time he was a freshman. What's been the biggest area that you've seen him improve in during his first 3 years with your program? And then the second part of the question, I know you and Edric have talked. What is the area of his game that he needs to improve on the most, or what's he focusing on going into his final fall with you?
I think just from a content aspect, is really increasing his football IQ overall, and understanding scheme and understanding concepts, that when coaches get to talking, he can, fit right in and understand what they're saying. I think it's it's one thing to be a great player, but it's another thing to really take it to another level and understand just the language and the pedagogy of the game of football. And I think as he transitions and they play various fronts and different, defensive concepts, he'll fit right in and be able to pick up those concepts and make an impact. He's done an awesome job really taking his body. He's a young man that got the weight room and he's always been a bigger guy. And sometimes those guys get by with being big, but he really took it another step and really, added muscle, added strength upper body wise. He's a guy above, I believe, like 315 on the bench press. Might even be more than that. I'm actually not in the weight room anymore, but his explosiveness is unique too. He gets off the floor pretty well and he's got a pretty good first step. So.
Yeah, I really that's one of the things that caught my eye when I watched his film. Coach, I know you talked about North Kansas City High School being one of the most diverse in your state of Missouri. Obviously, listening to Edric and do some of the media that he did yesterday, very well spoken young man. Is he someone? Does your high school allow for early enrollment? Is he going to early enroll at Alabama? What's he going to do once he finishes playing for you in the fall?
This time we're ready to send.
He is going to early enroll. And like I said, he's up for challenge. We had a young man that early enrolled this past spring at Iowa State.
Nice.
And he kind of really put that in play for a lot of our kids moving forward. And one of the reasons why I kind of gave him the advice and kind of encouraged him to do that because he was a bigger guy, and I knew if he stuck around, we would probably have more issues with his body weight. So I knew he was a remarkable player and he would do a great job at the next level. So he was able to do it, and he's passed that along to Edric and the other guys we got in our program. And that's something as they're coming in and engaging in this process that they're talking to coaches about.
Well, and then I'd be remiss. I know you had a lot of coaches come through. We saw Edric's Final Six. I mean, it was basically a who's who from coast to coast of college football. I know you, I'm sure, counseled him closely, and as you said earlier in the conversation, you told him that he was going to have to probably go to Alabama and camp and work. But what as you've spoken with him and he went public with his decision that really I think he had made up his mind maybe even a month before, what set Alabama apart from the other schools? And as you dealt with Freddie Roach and the coaching staff, what impressed you about them?
Coach Roach did an awesome job really rebuilding a relationship and rapport with Edric and his family. He came up and visited. We talked to my office for about an hour. And I think the thing that's different about a place like Alabama, these kids, they already know. When I say they already know the level of success. They know the standard. They know the expectation. And so from that aspect, you don't really have to do much explaining. I think the biggest piece you have to share with them is that, hey, you're going to have to work at a different level. Are you prepared for that? The thing I can say is engaging in that conversation with Edric, I'll say that's something I believe he's prepared for because he's really invested in that process and understanding, like, where I'm going is different. It's not the same. So.
And we're talking to Leon Douglas, North Kansas City High School head coach. And, Coach, to peel the onion back more on the job that you've done in helping develop Edric, how many years now have you been at North Kansas City? Because I was kind of researching it. Look, I know you've been there quite a few, but how long has your tenure been at the school?
I believe this is my I've been here since 2009.
Nice.
I've been head coach since 2011.
Mm-hmm.
wherever that is in math. I'm kind of to the point.
I guess you're in year 11 then as head coach. So
yeah.
you've been there over a decade, so you've seen quite a bit of talent come through, and of course Edric is right up there with some of the best players you've coached. But talk about now the expectations for this year. I mean, you've obviously established a winning culture in this program. What's the expectation this year for your squad, led by one of the best defensive linemen in the country?
I think it's pretty simple. I'm challenging our guys to really take more responsibility for their success, to really own it, to put it in their hands and make the most of every opportunity. I think so many times it's easy to look at things from just that outside lens and think you have no control over your success or your failure. But to get them to understand, like in all things, I have a say in it. And then have those attitudes really carry over to other aspects of their life. What they do in the classroom, what they do in the community. What kind of son, what kind of brother are they? Those are the concepts that we really want to hammer home. But this year, the talent's there. We have talent. We're a very talented football team. We have another guy in our program that's committed to a Power 5 Blue Blood program, who's one of the more highly recruited players in the country. We have some other guys that I think are going to be on their way as well. And so at the end of the day, with all that talent and all that, it's going to come down to just our efforts every day.
And certainly you've built a powerhouse program there, and Edric Hill will be one of those leaders. With Edric and going into his final fall for you, certainly he's gotten better every year. I was discussing this before bringing you into the conversation. He reminds me a lot of a young man, Fedarian Mathis, who came in from Louisiana, who was a 4-star level kid. Probably wasn't considered a 5-star, but developed certainly into an All-American at Alabama, became a second-round draft choice of the Washington Commanders, had 9 sacks last year. What do you see as the ceiling for Edric at a place like Alabama, where he'll have every resource, have top-level coaching? Certainly he had great work in your program and great high school experience, but how good can this young man be?
I think Edric can play football at a high level for a very long time if he applies himself, stays healthy, really just commits to the process of really, the term I've kind of been using with him is like, be a pro. Having a pro mindset doesn't start when you're drafted. Having that pro mindset starts right now. How you prepare, how you take care of your body, how you're resting, it's different. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to do an NFL internship with the Chiefs, and just being in that environment, I always said I wanted to be able to take that experience and that just ideology, that way of doing things back to the high school level and let those young men know, like, this is a lot closer than what you really realize. Sometimes these kids think, 3 years is such a long time, 4 years is such a long time, when it's really not, And so really instilling that process, that work ethic, that commitment to being self-reflective, self-evaluative, and really being able to make change and work on you and then apply it in a team format, that starts right now. I think if he can do that, I have no doubt that he could be very similar to the other guys that Alabama has produced over the years.
And Coach, how did it change him when he went to Alabama and performed well and became a guy like I was reading some of his quotes, and he said that really several weeks ago he told Nick Saban during a visit to Alabama in June, he was like, well, Coach, I want to commit. And Nick Saban's like, well, are you sure? Because we'd really love to have you. Did you see his confidence go to a different level when he was able to perform at a high level at a camp like Alabama? Or did he already have that kind of self-belief that he felt like he was going to be able to play at the highest level?
I think that the thing is, he didn't have to. We thought we were going to have to participate in the camp. He didn't have to.
Right.
And he didn't have to. I think it gave him a different buzz about himself, a different confidence. I think the number of offers that he had, he knew he was a good football player, but I think it really solidified to himself of like what's really inside of him. And so I think as he really navigated, recruiting these last few months, the challenge of competing and going to an Alabama has meant a lot to him.
And how have you seen him develop as a leader? Because I know you said you had the young man go to Iowa State last year from your program and enroll early and kind of show the path to your kids that this could be done. Have you seen him take on a bigger now leadership role now with going into his final season for you and being such a big part of what you hope to accomplish in the 2022 season at North Kansas City?
Yeah, he's a young man that he was always a guy to count on, made plays. But when I say he took that next step in being able to be someone that the team leans on and depends on, his work ethic, he sets a great example on a daily basis. He brings it. He's not a rah-rah talker guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that you can count on just with consistent, high-quality effort and a great attitude and a great disposition. He has a growth mindset. He doesn't look at things and doesn't take a negative view. He's okay with working. He's okay with, kind of having to, kind of be buried and not be seen and just work. And sometimes I think that just some kids struggle with feeling like, you got to be in the spotlight, like everything's got to be on Twitter or social media. Like, sometimes you have to get away from the spotlight and really grind and really work on you. He can do that. He's okay with that.
He certainly sounds like the kind of student-athlete Nick Saban likes in his program, someone that keeps his head down and works, and certainly I think he's got a bright future. I think he made an educated decision and a great one for himself, and certainly one that's going to continue to help your program grow as you get kids to the SEC level and into a program like Alabama. But, Coach, we really appreciate the time and the insight into North Kansas City high school football and the look you gave us into your program and to Edric. We really appreciate it, and I have a feeling with the program that you've built, this may not be the last conversation we have, but thank you for joining us this morning on the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio with Drew DeArmond, and we really look forward to speaking with you again down the road, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Thank you. That's Coach Leon Douglas. We're going to go on our final break, wrap up the Recruiting Blitz on this Tuesday here on Blitz Sports Radio.
The Blitz has been called.
With us today, Dr. Tracy Lowry of Best Vein Care of Huntsville.
When we evaluate a patient and they indeed have significant venous disease, most third-party payers, private insurance, Medicare, require us to treat every patient conservatively at least 90 days. Conservative treatment includes increasing ambulation, elevation of the legs, and the wearing of compression stockings. It's very common for folks to come see us in March or April wanting to have their veins fixed before they go into swimsuits starting in June. When we see someone in March or April, they're going to require at least 90 days of conservative treatment before we can even go to the insurance carrier to get permission to treat their veins. So if you think you have a venous problem, now is the time to come in and get a free screening so we can determine whether or not you need something evaluated. If you have a vein problem or you think you may have a vein problem, now's the time to contact us at bestveincarehuntsville.com.
TOC Sports has been there for you. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what does that mean? It means for more than 20 years, Alabama's largest orthopedic group has been there providing coverage and care to more schools and student athletes in the Tennessee Valley than any other group. It means whether you are the star football player, the all-region volleyball ace, or someone who hurt their knee in a weekend pickup basketball game, TOC Sports physicians are proud to have the opportunity to care for all your orthopedic needs. It means for parents, coaches, athletes, desk jockeys, or even weekend warriors. TOC Sports physicians continue to meet and exceed the orthopedic and sports medicine needs of our community. But most importantly, during these challenging times, we're here for you now and will continue to be here. So as long as there are players on the field, games to be played, and contests to be won, the orthopedic specialists from TOC Sports will be ready to help. We don't know what the future holds, but you can count on the TOC Sports team to stay committed to you so you can stay in the game. Call 256-539-2728 today and ask to see a TOC Sports physician. Check them out online, also Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Bailey Custom Boats. We knew our boats were special when we would stop at any outdoor store to stock up on supplies for a boat trip, only to come back out to the parking lot and see people standing on and around our boat and a confused sales rep telling them it's not for sale and they don't even have that type of boat. Fast forward a few years, and now you can buy your very own one-of-a-kind Bailey Custom Boat. We hand cut our wood from cypress we pull from the river in Mississippi. There's a lifetime warranty on the bill, faster and more maneuverable like a ski boat, and better fuel mileage than any pontoon on the market. With 350 horsepower, a Bailey Custom Boat will go 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds. And our custom boats are Coast Guard approved for offshore and virtually unsinkable. We'll be showcasing our custom boats at different lakes over the next few weeks. Find out where at BaileyCustomBoats.com. On YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We're taking orders now for 2023 delivery from April to May. You gotta pay to play. BaileyCustomBoats.com.
Welcome back to the Blitz Sports Radio with D Squared. I'm Drew DeArmond. Leon Douglas, what a great segment that was. You can tell he's a very serious guy, great coach, has an outstanding program, and that's why Edric Hill has developed the way he has. Now the ball is in Edric's court, literally and figuratively, to develop as a senior, have a really good year, and then go to the University of Alabama and have a chance to turn into a pro. And as you heard Coach say, he wants him to act like a pro and believes that he can play football at a very high level for a very long time. And so that's going to be something that we monitor, and I think he's definitely a big-time prospect and a really good fit for the University of Alabama. And now it's all going to be, just looking to see, what happens going forward. Certainly Freddie Roach gets a lot of credit for pulling in this kid, no doubt about it, and he's done so, and he looks like a quality addition. But now, where does this class go from here as far as how does it fill out? I still think they probably got 7 to 8 slots remaining. I think they need at least 3 more, defensive linemen. So we'll see, no doubt about it. I think one of them could be, as I talked about, Jordan Renaud from Tyler Legacy High School. I think he's an outstanding, player. And again, his top 6 is, Alabama, and I think, really he's got it down to a top 2. It's Alabama and Oklahoma, but he had some other schools that I think that he really considered heavily and that he liked a lot. But I think he felt like he just needed to whittle it down to a final 2. Now, I know he considered Oregon. He considered Texas A&M. I know Bo Davis, former defensive line coach at Alabama, really liked him at Texas, but he's eliminated them. But again, I think if you could get this kid, I don't think there's any doubt Jordan Renaud would be a big piece of the puzzle, and we'll see. I know he's going to commit in September unless he pushes that back. So we'll see, what he decides to do. But again, I think he's someone to watch that could be the next piece of the defensive line puzzle for the University of Alabama, no question about it. But certainly Edric Hill's a big piece. We want to thank Coach Leon Douglas for joining us. We want to thank you for tuning in and listening to another hour of the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared on Blitz Sports Radio. We'll come to you tomorrow. We're going to talk to Brooks Austin, talk some Georgia, talk some Caleb Downs, and there'll be another great conversation. But don't forget the Blitz later today from 2 to 4 with our Cavalcade of Stars. And download that app, the Blitz Sports app, Blitz Sports Radio. It's on Google. It's on the Apple Store. But we'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm Drew DeArmond. Come see me at Greenbrier tonight if you want some great conversation and great Alabama football talk. But we'll talk some more recruiting on Wednesday.